Hello and welcome to Conversations in Close Protection with your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our goal is to engage the greater protection community, inspire innovative thought, and as always, continue the conversation around all things close protection. Let's see what the guys are talking about this time.
Welcome to Conversations in Close Protection. My name is Chuck Randolph. Across the digital divide is the monistic Mr. Chris Story. Sir, hello. How are you? What's happening? How goes it?
It's really difficult when you come up with these adjectives because, I can scour the dictionary or the internet or Urban Dictionary and
the Urban Dictionary.
I don't know what you're going to pull out. Yeah. So go on. Monistic, what is it?
It is putting all of life's grand mystery and everything into one significant belief.
Wow. Right on.
Stay, my friend.
Yeah.
I figured it was time for a little deep adjective.
A little earthiness.
Cool. Earthiness. Yeah.
Right on.
So yeah, how's it going? Where are you at? Traveling or back home?
Home.
Yeah, it's nice.
Happy camper. How about yourself?
I just got back and probably walking out the door again in a few days. I mean, like you and I've been trading, I think, texts pretty regularly today and through the last couple days about people trying to get out of Afghanistan and who do we know that's on the ground? Who do we know that's, can help get people out? And so it's been a pretty busy 2 weeks, and on top of that, getting ready to head down to CICP Studios, Texas, and get all that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I just got back myself, not from Afghanistan, of course. And then I'm headed to,
or so you say.
I'm headed to Midwest, I guess. This
nice.
Weekend for a week, so it'll be good. Yeah, the whole freaking Afghanistan, complete freaking dumpster fire, travesty. I mean, name your disparaging adjective. It's disheartening and sad and maddening and all of the above.
It's everything. I mean, I think for all of us, that have served over there or have had people that served over there or who have served in some capacity overseas. I mean, you see it unfolding and then falling apart. Of course, you and I personally have been talking about this, I think, for a long time in watching it happen. And I mean, it's very personal on one level. And, you think about those folks that are over there every day in harm's way, trying to help people get out or trying to, help with the evacuation or the exfil. And it's maddening and it's frustrating. And, you just wish you could get a plane and get over there and bring him home. But it is what it is right now, my friend.
Yeah. It's a mind-boggling myriad of a freaking shit sandwich.
Yep.
Across the board, right? I mean, I think, early on people were pushing for interpreters or people who have served the U.S. honorably for many years. I mean, if you think about it, there are people in Afghanistan who didn't know a time without Americans, right? That are, they're, young men and women at this time. And then just the fact that, mired in bureaucracy. I mean, I remember that there were so many people that you were just like, oh, this guy's done whatever, he'll be in the US, and it gets denied because it goes from the DOD to the DOS, or it gets denied because it goes to the, from whatever agency, and just gets mired in red tape and freaking idiocy. And I think this whole thing has been compared to Vietnam, but the difference is that with the rapid communications, video, immediate global communications and the networks that people have, not only the veterans and contractors and folks who have been overseas, but now those folks are in, some are in a position of leadership, right? And there's the crazy thing is that there are these so many like massive grassroots efforts where the government where the government has failed, right? I mean, and that's the only bright spot in all this. But there's a window and a timeline. I mean, the equipment that we left behind, just no freaking foresight or forethought in any of this, and we've put ourselves, pre 9/11, except for they're just better armed, better trained, and motivated because we banged out. It's freaking disheartening.
Well, lack of grand strategy takes patience. And it takes long patience, and this is not a good example, at least in my opinion, on our part of that. Right. I agree with you, though. There are some great associations. Like No One Left Behind. I've seen that quite a bit lately, and I know a lot of my buddies are donating to that to say, let's get some of these folks that helped us. I mean, I've checked in on some of the Terps that were with us. We had a young man that I can't seem to figure out or find where he was, and he was studying to be a dentist and took the job as a Terp because it paid good money, and and then we did have another Terp that worked with us that we actually did get out of Afghanistan, but that was years ago, and he is living down in your neck of the woods. But as of this recording, and it will go up this Thursday or late the 26th probably, there are State Department is saying 1,500 Americans remain. Some of those are some students, I think, from California. They're sheltering at a hotel, thinking they could get to. They're sheltering folks at a hotel, U.S. citizens at a hotel, thinking, hey, they could just walk them to the gate at Kabul. We all know that turned into a shit show the minute it started. And anybody that's flown into KIA understands it is. I mean, it's exactly what you would imagine. And there's so many players over there too, Chris, that are in the mix. You've got the Taliban, you've got Al-Qaeda, you've got ISIS-K, you've got the Haqqani network. And now you have all these players that are just in there stirring the pot and doing whatever they can do to add to the chaos as the U.S. and allies are extracting their folks, and the Taliban just seemingly is taking over.
Yeah. But, this whole thing freaking, it seemed like somebody just woke up and said, hey, you know what? Get your shit. I want them out today. Right. I mean, literally, with all the stuff that was left behind, all the craziness. And there's this freaking, maddening spin to it, right? I watched this thing the other day where I think it was last night, where the spokesman in the White House was like, look, we didn't leave all this stuff to the Taliban. We left to the Afghans. The Afghans left to the Taliban. And I'm like, if I could have strangled that guy, right, through my television, not in person, but through my television, I would have done so. Because it's such I saw that, and just
my comment to that was like, sir, have you ever heard of unintended consequences or second and third orders of effect?
Yeah.
And this is a classic example. By the way, the Afghan army outnumbers the Taliban 3-1. However, and this is not Randolph talking. This is something I read in the paper, and I've experienced. I mean, just the problems with paying and equipping the troops and the bureaucracy that was the Afghan government. The Afghan army said, hey, it's not worth it. I'm not getting paid. I'm not getting fed. I'm out of here, and you're threatening my family.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
not simple, right? It's not simple, but the thing is that, everybody's like, wow, we really underestimated how quickly the Taliban would take over. We missed that.
Did we though?
And then the other crazy part was, people calling it intelligence failures. Right. Like there's a decision maker on every one. Right. And we got to understand there are two silver linings to this.
Yeah.
One is the grassroots efforts to freaking to do 100%. The right thing. Right.
100%.
Number two is with the small amount of American and allied forces, once they were removed, it was like a freaking cancer, right?
Yeah.
Now that sounds horrible, but when you realize the impact of that small amount or that small force and what it was doing and holding back that tide, that's the other piece. That's the other piece of the silver lining. Now, unfortunately, this is the gift that keeps on giving. Will keep on giving for a long, long time, right? Already, this is story, as you like to say, or this is Chris speaking in terms of, we've just set our foreign policy back 100 years easily. We've gone back to at least pre 9/11, 2001 in Afghanistan, and now we've shaken our allies' confidence in us, in what we're doing, because this was a surprise to them as well. And not only that, we've bolstered the Taliban, we've bolstered China, we've bolstered Russia. I mean, just yesterday, Russia came out in the news and said, "Hey, do we really think that the U.S. is committed to Ukraine after all this?" Right. So I mean, we've really freaking stepped up in the eyes of the world. Right. Great job.
Well, and it's again, I go back to grand strategy, and I go back to, I like your thought that like somebody just woke up and said, "Hey, let's get him out of here." I actually think it's more akin to somebody getting presented with the dim sum bill, and they said, "Oh crap, we got to pay for this," and dine and dash.
Yeah. But the difference between the dine and dash is that they pulled the plug on the koi pond inside. Everybody got thrashed on the way out. So yeah, it's not awesome.
I am keeping my eye on Ahmed Massoud's son, who says he's not going to surrender to the Taliban. It will be interesting to see how things play out there with the tribalism and I for one, just personally, the Taliban are the Taliban. They are not a good force. They are not someone that, they're bad guys. They are terrorists. They are extremists. I don't it's confusing, and, it's confusing to me, and it's confounding. I mean, in some sense, I try to see the big picture, but I like your allusion to Vietnam. And I think, I was on vacation last week, and there was a Vietnam veteran there, and we were sitting and having a coffee. And I said, this is what you guys must felt like watching Hanoi. And he was like 100%.
Yeah. Well, it's just crazy. And I was laughing about the strategy piece, right? Like, I've only heard one strategy that even makes a modicum of sense. And I don't want to share it. And even that is really far-fetched, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't appear to me that there was any strategy or thought process in any of this. I'm sure it was pushed forward, right? But it seems like we're just like, nope.
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't feel this is an intelligence failure. I think at some point, it's intelligence-driven, operations-led, risk-informed, and
except for this one,
threat-informed. And in this one, it was intelligence-driven, threat-informed, and then operations. And I don't mean ground operations or military. I think at some point, operations leadership just said, "Yep, we're not listening."
And
and by the way, folks,
that was fucking General Leroy fucking Jenkins who did that shit. That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. It was Leroy Jenkins.
And this isn't Chuck and Chris being political. This is us just being like thoughtful
Americans.
and watching it. And
we're being fucking Americans.
And we have UK allies there. We have Polish allies. We have German allies. We have a bunch of, we have Australian, a coalition of people that have been over there and helped. And, I also am impressed, and I'm humbled by the number of people that have stepped up. I mean, we were kind of joking at the beginning, but, you and I have scoured and spent a good part of the day looking for folks that can help evac people, and, doing it on our own time and our own dime, just because we care about the cause. And there are many folks out there, like we said, no one left behind, that are trying to get folks. So, for those people that are there and sheltered down, keep your heads down, and trust no one. It's not an easy process. You just don't show up to the airport. You have a lot of paperwork. There's got to be approvals, but have faith, keep your heads down, watch your six, trust no one, and take care of yourself and your family first and foremost. And if you need to, head to the border.
What's crazy is that I was on, if you go to Digital Dunkirk, I think it's .com.
Yeah.
You can look at all the organizations that are providing support and intelligence and all these grassroots efforts. And one of the, efforts was raising money. And it at least in the account that it showed that they raised, the goal was 6 million, and they raised over that as of this morning. So, I mean, it's just people just donating anywhere from 10 or 15 or, 20 or, up to $20,000 is the highest donor. Right. So, I mean, people are motivated, and the crazy thing is that, like, Americans, and I'm just saying Americans, right? Because this is my perspective, but people in the UK, anybody that had anybody over there that were using interpreters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All of these grassroots efforts are being, and efforts themselves are being directed where essentially the government has failed. That piece is really, really impressive.
I think about the young man who, like I said, was a dental student. We had several interpreters. The one I can talk about, some others, we'll just leave those where they are. But the one young man, I mean, he was there 100% of the time when we were knocking on doors in nice ways and less than nice ways. He was right there in my hip pocket the whole time, because somebody had to interpret. When we were going into a cave, he was close behind. I mean, and these are folks that had limited training and, had limited arms. And, if you weren't lucky enough to get a tier 1 and you got a local terp and you vetted them and all that, I mean, all the more. So, but it does. I mean, it also says the power of the veteran network. We believe in the debt, and we believe in paying the debt and paying it forward. So I'm proud of our fellow veterans that have stepped up.
Yeah. I mean, and the crazy thing is it's not just veterans, right? There are people who
course,
just want to be involved, right? And do what's right. It's really impressive. On the flip side,
that's the thing.
On the flip side of things, there are some Muppets out there that are like, let's freaking get our shit and go over there. I'm like, look, dude, the closer you get to the military, Captain America, is freaking Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Sit your ass down.
Dude, I mean, I mean, look, the idea of, if you've ever, and Chris, I know you've been involved in this, I've been involved in this stuff. I mean, global guardians. I mean, extracting people from hostile zones, it is not for the weak of heart. It is not for people. You cannot General Leroy Jenkins that stuff and just show up and say, let's do it live.
It's not for the weekend warrior, right? I mean, especially in this environment that we're seeing right now, it is the highest of high risk operations behind enemy lines. I mean, name whatever it is that you think it is, it's that, right? I mean,
for real though,
it is the highest of high risk operations in this case, because you're essentially moving into, behind enemy lines, right?
Yep.
You're not wanted to be there. You're unsupported. It's not like there's a freaking QRF ready because the base is surrounded, so you're relegated to air only. And it's just a bad, you're in an urban environment. It's a freaking bad situation. This is something that units would train for a very long time to go do an extraction like this, right? Back in the day. Now the guys that have been doing it day in, day out, it's a raid that you just grab a package and you do your thing. But for the guys that are sitting on the couch going, sure, I'll go with these other Muppets that are going to show up in front of this company thing, like that's just a freaking you're waiting for a disaster. And I guess we'll see you on either the news or in a movie.
Well, I think if you're someone, you're watching this and your buddy calls and she says, hey, we've got an op, we need you on this. I mean, I don't even say trust, but verify, trust, and then verify, and then question the entire way, because you got to be
At
careful.
this
There's
point,
so many things to be careful with. You don't want to end up doing unsanctioned work or something that's not, and then you end up screwing up something for someone else or something that's official that's going on. And you have unintended consequences that, affects far more lives than you thought about.
I'd say at this point, your window is almost closed if you're sitting in the US.
Yeah.
You got 6 days, 5.5 days as of as of we speak right now.
Yeah, 5.5 days. And then I saw something else that said, well, we really aren't going to put a date on it. But I feel like, we've put a date on it, whether we say we are or we're not. I mean, a date's been put on it. So
that's the other piece of freaking, at least when I checked, kind of BS, and it's a freaking spin.
Mm-hmm.
We agreed to terms with the incoming government that we would be out by the 31st of August. So from their perspective, we don't get to change the deadline. That's what was negotiated. Yeah. And after that, they're kind of giving everybody the old eat a dick. Right. So that spin of, hey, we're going to follow the timeline is because we're being forced to, right. Which is another travesty, but hey, good times.
And I would say one last bit on that. If you're someone and you have that feeling like I need to be involved, I want to do something. We're coming up on an anniversary of 9/11 in a few weeks as well. And if you feel compelled to do something, go find something like No One Left Behind, or go to Digital Dunkirk.
Yep,
and
I agree.
Give resources. And if you don't have money, then give time.
Yep.
If you're an analyst or you're doing protective analytics or you're doing something, look, there's folks that are helping and there's ways to get involved. So I guess that would kind of be
plenty of opportunity for plenty of bodies without going, going overseas and trying to play,
Yeah. And we won't, I'm sure we'll be reporting back on this soon. So
yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a lot going on.
Something else we've been following, we had our podcast when we talked about Haiti and the issues in Haiti. And, we said we kind of continue to follow that because I think it's something we need to continue to follow because it's an assassination of a sitting executive, whether that individual was a good president or not. It's assassination of a president. It's something we need to follow and see what lessons we can learn from that. But did you see the New York Times article talking about the 15 hours of recordings that they had access to? A Colombian television channel indicated that the statements, they had 15 hours of audio recordings by which they extracted statements. This is from a New York Times article that I think appeared. Let me see, because I saved it because I knew you'd want to talk about it. This was August 21st. And the title of the article was he guarded Haiti's slain president, and he was suspected in a drug inquiry. So some interesting things unfolding in there with regards to what actually was driving the operation that resulted in the death of the Haitian president.
Yeah, pretty interesting. I mean, as this whole thing continues to unfold, right? I mean, the next piece that's associated with this is the, kind of piggybacking off of Pierre's interview, where the chief of staff said, "Hey, if anything happens to the president, you're going to get arrested, even though you're doing the right thing," right? They arrested, I think, all of at least the residential security team, if not more, just anybody who was associated with it. I think, as a precautionary or in support of the investigation, but all those guys got rolled up as well, right? While they're still trying to figure out who did what, where, when, and how, and of course, why, what was the big why in all this. So it's crazy.
And I mean, I saw where the one individual that they hemmed up, is where was it here? The DEA has pursued for years the disappearance of hundreds, if not thousands, of pounds of cocaine and heroin whisked away by corrupt officials.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's third world politics wrapped. It truly is an enigma, isn't it? I mean, you've got.
Well, I mean, if you look at a transit point, as Haiti as a transit point, right?
Yeah.
There's got to be some level of that piece involved, especially as we understand, like, not necessarily disparaging the Haitian people, but I mean, corruption is rampant in that area, and I saw 3 former officials of the Haitian government that were either fired. I guess they were all fired by former or by Moise.
Mm-hmm.
One of which was a judge. One of it, or a Supreme Court justice. One of them was, some other senior politicians. One was suspected of planning a coup. So, I mean, again, a lot going on. I mean, I think Pierre kind of relayed, gave us a little glimpse into what what that looks like, in third world countries, as you surround yourself with people that you know and trust, and everybody else is, looking at you with a target on your back. So, interesting. And I think the next piece that's interesting is that in the article that you mentioned, what do they say about who is supposed to be killed?
Oh, yeah. And let me just, I'll just quote from the article. It says, in the audio, someone presented as Rivera, whom the other ex-soldiers called Mike, said that everyone had to be killed. They mean all the police, the president's security, everyone who was inside the house, they had to be killed. Carmona said that the order that Mike gave them was, quote, they had to go in and kill everyone. They had to kill the policeman. Rather, if there was even a pet, kill the pet. There could be no witnesses. So kill the presidential hamster.
Well, it seems that maybe they didn't work out the way they wanted it to, but still.
I mean, it's just the we may never find out, but if we will keep tracking this, because at some point, hopefully some pieces will get woven together and we'll be able to say, like, kind of have a timeline of what happened, because it just sounds like so many things interwoven, as you said, and then something going wrong and somebody saying, okay, this is it, kill them all, it's done.
Right.
And is that kill them all because we accidentally killed the president, because we were going in to actually extract him, or we're going in to have a coup? I mean, so there's a lot to come out of this for sure.
Well, I think that, one of the big things from the security perspective is, what was it, 20 to 26, trained, South American Special Forces folks. Most residential security teams couldn't do 4 or 2 to 6, right? Defeat that. So, while that's not necessarily the same risk level that most folks in the U.S. face, it should cause you to reevaluate your security operations, how far out you can see, what's going on, internal, external, at the residential security, compounds for those folks who are on those.
Well, and Chris, it doesn't look like we're going to be returning to work fully for any time soon. So, I mean, the importance of the residential security team as a center of gravity for the overall risk plan, it will continue to be highlighted, because it just goes to say, like, there's nothing that says that we're not going to, we don't want to come after you or your dogs or do whatever. But, more and more executives are probably going to remain to be working from home, at least in a hybrid condition. I know, in the state of Washington, we're back to a phase that requires you have to wear masks indoors. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure the second and third orders of effective, we would say, will be corporations. And they're already saying, like, hold, we're not going to return to work in September or October, as we originally stated. Mm-hmm. We're going to keep doing a hybrid till maybe even next spring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's a dynamic and fluid situation. I think what we need to look at are the associated risks with each of those. And I think couple weeks ago, was it the third, the executive threat watch that's put out by Rich Pettinger and his crew,
Mm-hmm. Great stuff.
quoted or used piece of the ONTIC Center for Protective Intelligence report in stating that 58% of the 300 respondents that did in the survey reported their CEO received physical threats after expressing a position on racial or political issues,
Mm-hmm.
which for whatever reason, COVID becomes political. 40% reported their CEO received threats after not expressing a position. And then 56% said their CEOs received threats after encouraging vaccinations and mask use. So the inverse would likely be true as well, right? So
yeah,
very, very polarizing issue. Don't really care what side of the fence you're on. Really, it's just understanding that, you know, that's an increased risk. And then, of course, you know, as all of these folks are or not in the office, it reduces, or it just increases their exposure at home, right? Then the next piece is with reduced travel, even if your CEO is traveling, their profile is a little bit higher because A, they're traveling, and B, if they're recognizable, it's easier for those smaller, less risk averse folks to identify, right? So that's the environment that you end up being in. So that could create a lot of risk for those folks who have traveling CEOs who are outspoken one way or the other on the masking or vaccinations.
A couple of interesting thoughts to add to that. There was a Wall Street Journal article in 2020. I think the guy's name was John Hagel, and he said that, like, this is 2020, but it goes along with what you're saying. Like 69% of executives have seen a dramatic increase in physical threat activities against their companies this year compared to 2019. Mm-hmm. And then another,
which is insane, right? Because most people weren't working in the organization at that time.
And then there was another, you know, the Verizon data breach investigate, the DBIR, the Verizon data breach investigative report. Highly recommend anybody gets a copy of that every year, you know, and at least reads the executive summary. And it said that according to the 2020 version of that, it suggested corporate executives were targeted 12 times more with regards to phishing or social through their home and through their travel. Like you said, their travel might be more easily viewed based on less people around. And I think we need to continue to watch this, because you're right. From the ONTIC report, you know, we started, Chris, our career in a 3G environment: guns, gates, and guards. Then we moved to a 4G environment: guns, gates, guards, gigabytes. And I would say the last 3 years are walking us into a 5G environments: guns, gates, guards, gigabytes, geopolitics. And the corporate officer, as you stated, I mean, corporate officers are coming out with their own geopolitical view. And many people are either going to agree or don't agree. And we're at a time right now where, regardless of what it is, it's a moment of which we can blow off steam, and we can go and have our say. I mean, that increases risk to mail, that increases risk to cyber, that increases risk to POI showing up to homes. I mean, all kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, just even internal, you know, somebody telling you to wear your mask, somebody not telling you to wear your mask. Like, you know, I was on a flight the other day, and you know, people just feel empowered to make a comment on, you know, last time I checked, it's a federal regulation that you wear your mask on a flight. You say you don't want to be on the flight, then don't, you know, wear your mask or get off, whatever. Right. It's just get through it. Right. And then as soon as the flight attendant was like, hey, can you just put your mask on, blah, blah, blah. And they're super like laid back about it. Like, hey, look, you know, even after you take off, just do it for takeoff. Right. So we're covered. And they're like, oh, you know, just had to make a comment, rule follower, blah, blah, blah. Like, God, dude, seriously, you know, but again, it's just that level where people just want to push back, push on something, do something, and lose their minds, right? And as we know, travel is a very stressful thing. So if you're just adding that dynamic to it, it's just not helpful, you know?
Well, and, from a threat management point of view, and we've talked about it here. We've had folks on the pod, talking about it. People have been sitting home in their own stew for several years, and now we may be going back. We may not. I mean, it might cause your mental acuity and your mental state to go all over the place. And you might somebody just might wake up one day and say, it's like the guy from the movie, The Office. He's like, I'm going to need you to move over there. And then he finally decides to,
right.
Just waiting for that guy to show up at the exec's home.
Yep. Okay. That's the last straw. Yeah. I'm with you.
But, also you see the sense that organizations are coming to a point to where they might, and we're seeing it now. Like we see some school districts, you see it happening in the federal government. Like, hey, if you're not vaxxed up, you're not coming, you're no longer employed.
Right.
What was it? Delta Airlines just said, if you're not vaxxed, you got to pay, the employee have to pay $200 a month in some type of health fee. And if I get that wrong, I'm sure somebody will correct us. But, now we have this potential overlay of, hey, Chris, regardless of whether you believe it or not, regardless of that, you must get vaccinated if you want to work here.
Yeah.
And that's going to affect protectors too. I mean, what happened? You're working on a res team, or you're working on maybe an executive response team in a corporation, or you're a body person. They're like, hey, dude, or hey, ma'am, we need you to are you vaccinated? Can you show proof?
Yeah.
Do you want the job? Are you vaccinated?
Yeah. I mean, it's gonna be a thing. It is what it is, right?
Yeah. I'm sitting here where we were talking about it before we started the cameras. Like, okay, well, is this controversial? Is it not? I mean, it is and it isn't. At some point, it's like, hey, if they said, hey, Chris, we're all going to be required to wear black suits, black shirts, and black ties because the performer doesn't want us to be highlighted backstage. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even bat an eye. Yep. Got it. Done.
Got to wear your blacks. That's it. Right. I mean, it must be this tall to ride the ride, and the thing about it is that it's an organization. So, or it's a private organization. So nobody really cares what you think, right? Those are their rules. I mean, whether you want to throw a shit fit about it or not, I mean, it's just
you're right.
Everybody's like, oh,
yeah,
Mark Zuckerberg is doing blah, blah, blah. He's violating our private. Well, no, he's not. Nobody tells you have to use Facebook, right? Yeah. They're not forcing you to use it. So if you don't want to, it's just like the thing, like vote with your feet. Don't use it, or don't work there, or don't do this, So it's a choice, essentially.
Yeah. And I think that's rapidly where we're going to be coming to with maybe with a lot of organizations is, hey, if you need to get vaccinated if you want to be a protection agent or work security or be in this corporate environment. Other places, right. Maybe not. Other places might say, yeah, we don't care. Or, yeah, you don't have to just wear your mask or work from home or do whatever. But,
right.
But we're all in security. We're all in risk. We're all like wired to think that way.
Right. I think we talked about this before. It's not like, hey, bro, I'm vaccinated. Well, I still need to wear your mask. How about that? Right. So, cause your head's going to explode. Right. Like
snap.
It's not like we're freaking chaining your neck to a grill. I mean, I know some people think about that, but look, the principal needs you to wear a mask. Right.
Yeah.
That's it. Done. Like pretend he's Michael Jackson or whatever the case is. It's just weird shit going on.
But then from a threat manager's point of view, I mean, you think about those other folks that, hey, you've got to be a mask to come in and be a coder. You got to be vaccinated to come and do code. You got to be vaccinated to come and work on the job. You got to be vaccinated to come and sit in the office. Mm-hmm. Snap. And then, somebody just loses their shit and that's all they were. And, and we're being somewhat tongue in cheek, but it's a serious, we both understand it's a very serious thing. And, fortunately we have a lot of good threat management folks out there that understand, the pathway to violence, which is also very similar to like a pathway to insider threat and other things. But, these are all things for us as protectors and security folks to continue to hone in on and bone up on, because I think it's going to continue to be forefront for all of us.
Yeah, it's going to continue to be a thing.
Yeah.
It was interesting, and it's interesting to circle back to the Afghan thing. Is that at some point the rapid evacuation from Kabul definitely made the Delta variant seem like it had been solved on the news at least, right? But
Yeah.
I know it's still a thing. It'll just be interesting to see, when that rises back to the surface, and I have some other points about,
and
news, et cetera, but we'll not get into those
now. And I'm already seeing or heard some things about the so-called Theta variant that might be on the horizon after that, but we'll save that for another podcast, my friend.
Yeah, that and booster shots, and it'll be good times.
Yes.
Or not really.
Yeah. Let's move to something more lighthearted and fun. You, my friend, just participated in Phelim's conference. I think it was a week and a half ago.
Yes. It was the CTG intelligence. I think it was physical cyber convergence. Yeah.
I was supposed to be out there, but I was on the road. So catching fish in northern Minnesota. But yeah,
no need
how did it go?
I think it went well. I think it was one of the first in-person ones that he'd had in a while. He wasn't able to attend because of the travel restrictions. So he was managing.
He was like Max Headroom,
afar, pretty much. Yeah, he was.
If half the people are like, "What's that?"
Well, no. He was definitely managing an absentia at times. So, it'd be like blowing up your phone. Like, why are you still up there? I'm like, cause we're on a different time zone or whatever the case was. But it was small, but well attended. And what I mean by that is that there were, a lot of representatives from the state of Arizona, some of their cyber folks, some key people in a matter of fact, from other states as well, Colorado, California, attendees, from Texas, your boss, Chuck Tobin, was there. And I thought it went, it was well, law enforcement, former law enforcement, FBI, a lot of folks were there, and it was big enough to not be intimate, and small enough to be impactful, if that makes sense.
Sure. What panel did you host? Remind me.
So I ran two panels. The first one, well, I won't say it in order, but I think the first one was is threat intelligence, the corner of corporate security modernization and convergence. So we really tried to define, how do we see threat intelligence? How do we see convergence? And then, where do we go from there? What impact did it have on modernization? And so that was really good. And I think it was pretty cool. Jason Valk from GoDaddy stated, very eloquently, hey, essentially convergence is a state of mind, right? And it sounded like, like he'd be wearing Birkenstocks and freaking have a, really long beard like he had previously. But again, it was really important for people to understand that, because I think people are looking for convergence to be a thing, or for convergence to be a merging of roles and all of the things, and you can't control what that is. So really it is a state of mind, and if it's always in the back of your head, and in terms of merged threats, then you have to have a merged threat response, or you should, otherwise you're going to get folded. So I thought it was a really, really good panel.
That's a really good point, because a lot of folks, it's like mission command in the military. A lot of folks are like, you have two sides of the fence. Some say it's a state of mind and a state of leading and how you manage and approach risk and operations. And others say, nope, it's tool sets.
Right.
And I think a state of mind, that's a really eloquent way to say it, because you're right. I mean, there's no one tool that's going to solve it.
Right.
And you can't ignore it. So you have to figure out a way to come to the middle. And that's the convergence spot to say, hey, look, we need to understand that these threats, don't get me started on common operating information. These threats and definition of priority intelligence requirements for that, but that's awesome.
Right. And so the big piece in that was, and there were some cyber folks in the crowd as well, a lot. Right. And they were attentive, and it wasn't a split crew. It was very informational, and And, some of the folks kind of pushed on, we talk about, is it a tool, and what tools do we use, and do we have the tools already in the organization? And, every tool adds risk, and what does that look like? And so you can say it's a tool and it's tool driven, but it doesn't work without the thought process, right? So chicken before the egg becomes, that thought process and state of mind. So that was a really good panel with, again, Jason, and then Chuck Tobin from At Risk International, Mike Trott from Discovery Land Company, and then Christina Duffy from Pal American Security.
Oh, nice.
It was a great panel.
That's a great crew. That's a great crew to talk with, for sure. What was the other one about, my friend?
So the other panel was really talked about corporate security modernization, right? And so even though the previous panel was connected to security modernization and convergence, we really focused on threat intelligence and what that looked like, and how to identify it, and then how to share it rapidly amongst teams. That was the first panel. The second panel was what does modernization look like? Is it people, process, technology, or training? And now that it was defined by whatever the panel stated it was, which is said, it was like, look, it's essentially, it's threat driven, right? So it's right. All of the above. It's people, process, technology, and training. And it kind of connected because this panel had it was Christian West, Martin Nielsen, Monica Duperon, Rodriguez, and I think one other. I'm gonna have to look at. I'm sorry, Max. His last name is evading me. I have to look it up. Anyways, and he's
Max Segal.
No, not Segal. Not Mac. Max.
Oh, sorry. I thought I heard Mac tinnitus.
Max, and I don't want to smash his last name, but Leos. Anyways, that was a great panel as well. We talked about what modernization looks like, and how do we apply that to the supply chain, corporate security, executive protection, and then where do we see the most significant impact, right? And the cool thing in that was it was agreed upon that the most significant impact was the ability to respond faster, right? Because you have all these other inputs, right? The modernization piece was that ability to respond faster to those threats, because Moore's law is increasing. So how do we increase our own? And as we bring all this other information in, that's what we do. And it was also stated, it was interesting that modernization doesn't necessarily mean technology, right? It really,
I go back to state of mind
process. Yeah, exactly. Right. And really that's because on both panels, your organizational maturity and capabilities and capacity might be very, very different because you have different business models, right? And you have different businesses themselves. Maybe you've got, one's a digital business, one's a retail, where you've got brick and mortar, and you've got digital sales, and another one might be just purely brick and mortar. One might depend on supply chain logistics. The other one just might rely on data. So there's really, no one size fits all, but that's where the mindset comes in, and your ability to understand your ability to respond to that modernization. So I thought that they were both really well attended and really well responded panels. And the first one was really corporate security driven, I think I would say. That was a kind of a different approach, and Chuck and Christina gave some great thought processes around how vendors approach their partnership with their customers. And then the other one was really more EP centric, if you will, but adapted those thought processes across the organization.
I do like the idea of modernization of people, process, priorities, and partners, with regards to your philosophy and your approach vector, because you're right, and that's in no particular order, Chris, but, I was thinking about what you said about process and people, and, adding if we understand what our priorities are of risk, we understand the people and we support them around that. We have the processes and we have that common operating information and language and all that other stuff. And then at the end of the day, I was like, people, and who are our partners? Physical, digital, marketing, legal, vendors. Who are the people in our neighborhood? So that sounds interesting. I'm sad I missed it. but I was also catching northerns and walleyes. So that was
well. I think that partner piece is important too, because it doesn't have to be an official partner.
100%.
If you have, I think, I don't know who came up with it, but it was like people as sensors, right? So,
Yep.
If you only let the security team get involved, and only the security team is going to get involved, right? So if you have an outreach and education program that says, here's what security does, but you're the tip of the spear, you're the sensor, we can't do anything without you kind of telling us what's going on, then you just expand your network and your sensors to whoever the winning party is, in terms of the size of your organization, which is exponential at that point. So, I mean,
and you cast that wide net, and if somebody, it's like, see something, say something. Okay, thanks. Appreciate you saying something, Chris. I appreciate you sending this email to us, of which, Chase Bank was trying to get you to click on a link, right, to your corporate mail. We'll take it. You might have got 500 that day, but that might, that tidbit might lead to something. And if nothing else, you've empowered your employees and your partners and everyone to say, hey, it's okay to say something, hey, Chris, I saw something weird in the parking lot. I saw this guy, and he'd been sitting there for 25 minutes. I come to the office every day at 8 a.m. and I've never seen that person.
Right.
Great. Thanks.
Too easy. And then you respond and then circle back, close that loop.
Yeah. Or, hey, great. Thank you. Tomorrow we'll have someone sitting there in surveillance to see, or counter surveillance or surveillance detection or whatever. It might be nothing. Yeah. Maybe it was a utility worker. Maybe it was a POI. So, but that's great stuff.
Yep. So great panels, great presentations by a lot of the folks, a lot of engagement, and just the shout out to Phelim and his team for making it happen and for the invite.
Yeah, I looking forward. Like, GSX is coming up, and I've noticed that they have announced that a lot of the presentations, well, I think all the presentations are going to be done on the main floor. That's the word that's been coming out. I don't know if that means we'll see less of a physical presence, but I also know they have a hybrid. GSX is talking about some hybrid approaches as well. OSAC, of course, remains virtual only, but I know there's some things that'll be coming out about some folks that are trying to get, obviously unofficial watch parties for OSAC, or, because a lot of OSAC and a lot of GSX, a lot of that's about the networking. Right. The seeing people. I know you and I are both going to be at GSX. Hopefully we can grab some folks and some microphones and do a little conversation or report out from there. That'll be fun. And then, of course, we have the Close Protection Conference, near and dear to both of us, and we're full speed ahead on that.
Yeah.
So looking forward to seeing folks out and getting out a little bit, and hopefully COVID or natural disasters or world events won't prevent us all from getting together at some point.
I know. It's freaking crazy town, dude. Like you just look and say, okay, so at least you tell me in your environment. I don't know, but mine, the world's on. I mean, the Northern California is on fire. Literally, most of it is on fire. I think if I go to the, 4 miles up the road, I can see the glow. The Afghanistan dumpster fire continues. COVID continues. Yeah, I don't know what else is going on. Maybe my food's getting cold. I don't know, but we'll see what tomorrow. We'll see what tomorrow holds. How about you?
Pretty much the same. I mean, even when we were in northern Minnesota, I thought I sent you this picture. If I didn't, I will send it to you tonight. But I took a picture of the sunrise, and it looks like we're on Tatooine. I mean, it's just low red orb hanging in the sky.
And you sent that to me. I thought that was really awkward. But now that I have context, I know what you're doing. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, it was just that was haze from wildfires, and some of it apparently was blowing down from Canada. Some of it was from some local stuff. We have the same going on here in Washington. We're back to masks indoors, like I said earlier. We've got Afghanistan. We've got, the Well, I just heard a very interesting conversation or discussion on a BBC podcast about the business of the Taliban. We won't go into it here, but it was well worth seeking out. Can't say I agree with everything they said, but just, it just keeps coming.
So I was talking to Chris Sipe today, and he was like, he's like, everybody's still trying to process 2020, and it's like we're literally, 2022 is right around the corner. Like 2021 will just be just a memory, just a blink.
Yeah.
It's just crazy.
Although I do got to give a shout out to Craig McKim for having his Protectors meetup in Ohio, of which, shameless plug, we were sponsors of the podcast, but appreciate Craig's effort always to get people together and try to. It looked from the pictures and from his write-up and from some of the texts that we got, it looked like it was a great event. So shout out and kudos to that group for getting together in spite of everything.
Yeah.
And trading some beer or coffee or water or wine and some discussion. So
yeah, awesome. I'd also like to give a shout to Alan Perry of Veterans Covert Protection Group. They've been hosting some training in the Northern California and some other areas as well. But
nice.
A lot of times I'll just call people and be like, "Hey man, come join us, get off the couch or whatever you're doing. It's outdoors and
that's awesome.
It'll get you in the game," and they kind of use it as a networking piece. So
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, they're doing good things.
Yeah, that's really cool. You should, next time you go out, you should take a mic and get some roll and see what they're doing and just talk to people. So that's great. I mean, in anything to get people out to and get people out of their own funk, as Chris said, we're still trying to, I think some of us are still trying to process the end of 2019.
Yeah.
So
what just happened?
Did get a very nice piece of feedback in a LinkedIn message about the interview with Ryan Long, and a young protective intelligence analyst new to the industry. Really appreciated what Ryan had to say, and was trying to watch and listen to what his advice was to kind of move forward in the industry. So that's kind of cool, and it makes me feel good that we're doing that kind of stuff and helping people find those pathways.
Yeah, good times.
Speaking of helping find pathways.
Wait. Sorry. I need to interrupt you.
Yep.
Also, it was good to see Shane Stewart today. It was a little awkward because he was wearing a tie, but
he always wears a tie.
I know.
He claims he's coming on the pod.
Well, I hope so.
You know what we should do? Video pod with Shane Stewart and a tie.
That'd be awesome.
We could wear ties. Said no one ever. Or we could give him a CICP t-shirt.
I could do that. Yeah, there you go.
We could do that. What's coming up on Clubhouse, Chris, next week? I know we skipped a couple weeks due to operations and vacations, so I think we're owed that.
Yeah. So next week, or this Monday, I guess, August 30th at 5:00, we'll be talking about training and essentially evaluating training. I think, it's something that some protectors, training is always a roll of the dice, right? Unless you're able to, you're throwing your money out to going, okay, what's going to happen, right? I've seen all the videos, I've seen this, that, and the other, but what am I really going to take away from this? And so I think we're going to just take a look at evaluating training and skill sets and what do you need and what's cool versus what is needed. And I think that we need to understand what that looks like.
It'll be good. You're a good trainer, and we both designed training programs, and I know a lot of the folks that come on our particular channel in Clubhouse, they tend to be a little longer in the tooth, and they've been around the block and done some stuff. So I think that'll be a great discussion, especially like you say, let's get away from the flashy stuff and talk about what do you really need to do to develop those metrics and those training goals, and then how do you look at them to measure success, because it's your hard-earned money that you're spending. How do you know that you're spending it the right way?
Right.
Or resources as it was. So that's pretty cool. I do have one thing before we close. My wife, who often will wake up at midnight or 2 a.m. and can't go back to sleep, sent me a meme the other night, and it said, how do you get two guys to have a meaningful conversation? Put a microphone in front of each of them and tell them it's a podcast. So She said, is that you and Chris? I got it the next morning at
That's
like
so
5:30 when I woke up, and I was like, maybe.
so that's a different conversations in. It's pretty clear.
Of course.
It's close protection.
Yeah. I mean, it's conversations in.
Yeah.
Close protection.
Okay.
Give us a break. All right. I think we've hit all the points we wanted to.
I agree.
Anything else to add to this month's shop talk?
I think the last piece I would add is that I felt, frustrated at the beginning of this discussion, and you could tell by some of the language I used, et cetera, that I was kind of feeling a little bit. But for those folks who are feeling the same way, the one thing I don't feel is that my work there was not wasted. I think it still has value, but I also think that my frustrations, airing them was helpful. So, I could tell that my blood pressure was high, and as we started talking about other things, it kind of abated. So the point being is if you are frustrated by that or whatever's going on in the world, your efforts, wherever they were not in vain, and they're appreciated by us as well. If you need to talk with somebody about them, then reach out to us or reach out to a friend, but don't hold that shit inside.
Yeah. Don't hold it in. And where we are today doesn't mean that what efforts people gave, and some gave all, but don't forget them. And you're right, Chris, it's an emotional and personal issue for all of us. So if you feel that way, make sure you reach out and talk to somebody. Because that's what you got to do. So I'm getting a little emotional myself. So with that, let's move to close. My name's Chuck Randolph. This has been Conversations in Close Protection. The August Shop Talk across the digital divide has been the monistic Mr. Chris Story. Watch your hands, watch your six, and keep your heads down.
Good times.
You've been listening to an episode of Conversations in Close Protection. Email us at protectiontalk@outlook.com and find us on your preferred podcast platform. Please take a moment and consider rating us to help others find Conversations in Close Protection too. Look for us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and other social media spots. Conversations in Close Protection is brought to you by your hosts Chuck Randolph and Chris Story. Our engineering editor is the mighty Aaron Peck. Please remember that all opinions expressed do not represent those of any organizations or companies the hosts are affiliated with. This is Rachel saying watch your six and keep your heads down.